All right. Well, hello and welcome to our virtual stage crew series that we've been doing here. Really lucky today to have Paul McGinnis and Haley Jenkins joining us from beautiful New Jersey right now.
Beautiful New Jersey.
So Paul and Haley have both done a lot of theater, but they've also done a lot of TV and film and pretty much anything with puppets that you can think of. These two have done it. So mostly we've focused kind of on theater and how folks have gotten into theater, but I think you guys are probably a little bit more non-traditional and like have a wider variety of like kind of career path. So feel free to just kind of deviate from my questions as you see fit. So generally we start by asking like how you got into theater, but I don't really know if you got into theater or you got into puppets first, or like how these things got together. So like,
Yeah.
feel free to just take that however you would like to.
So my favorite animal is probably the raccoon, if that's where I took your question.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And or the pigeon.
I was gonna say the pigeon.
Yeah, no, I like both.
She used to feed pigeons out of the window in our Brooklyn apartment.
By hand.
Once a pigeon got inside our apartment and walked around, and then I had to talk to her about basic human sanitation.
I loved it. Anyways, getting to your real question.
Also, I have a question. Can we not see the other participants?
You cannot right now because we're recording this. So then at the end, we'll invite them all back for kind of more of a Q&A. So we've kind of done this as like an interview and then a little chat here, fireside chat with Zane. And then we'll have everybody kind of like join at the end for a more open conversation.
Excellent.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. Okay, well, you want to go first?
What was the question?
How you got into
how you got into theater, and like for you guys specifically, like if like a theater entertainment, like if that led you to puppetry, or if like puppets brought you into theater, like
yeah, I was really into puppets when I was a kid. I was a big fan of the Muppet Show and Sesame Street, and built my first puppet for a production of Pippin in high school. But yeah, my first real puppet job was for the theater. I worked for the Bob Baker Marionette Theater in downtown Los Angeles and did 10, 12 shows a week, and it was heaven. So excited to be part of it. Did some plays in college as well. Did some puppet stuff there, but then I got into TV puppetry and I've done other stage stuff throughout that time. My two biggest stage projects, I would say, beyond TV is doing the Broadway tour of Little Shop of Horrors back in 2004 and going around performing with that plant, which was amazing. And doing Walking with Dinosaurs, which was this big arena show where we had life-size dinosaurs walking around an arena. But yeah, and then I've created my own stuff for theater, my own smaller pieces. I love to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I was a theater kid in high school for sure. Yeah, did all my high school shows. You mentioned that you guys did Shakespeare. I've only done Shakespeare once, and it was Midsummer Night's Dream. And the director had us do a post-apocalyptic version where at the end of every scene she would put on a song from The Cure and we would have to just dance out. It's really something.
I've never heard that story.
That's for the best.
The director that does all our Shakespeare stuff is a big fan of adding some kind of like semi-contemporary music as well, so we can get behind that.
Amazing. Yeah, cool. I mean, who doesn't love The Cure? But yeah, so I went to school for musical theater. I went to Point Park University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I went for musical theater. I was only there for 1 year. I really loved it. It was really hard and really immersive, but awesome. It was exactly what I wanted. But then I ended up taking one of the Disney college programs. I did one of those. So that took me down to Florida in their entertainment department. And that's where I puppeteered for the first time. I had always loved puppets and I had a lot of puppets, and puppets were always like the toy that I would get, or like the thing I would buy with my like, money if we went to Disney World or something like that. I'd always go and buy a puppet. But yeah, the first time I ever puppeteered was down in Disney, and I just fell in love with it and did a lot of their live shows there, and went on to do the Pee Wee Herman live show in LA, and then to New York to the Broadway version of that show, and now I work primarily in TV puppetry. That's
yeah, we haven't really talked to anybody doing TV stuff at all, and like TV puppetry is like very different. Do you guys want to just like kind of go into some of the like real basic kind of mechanics of like how that works? Like, I think we're pretty familiar with like how a show works, but
yeah,
the different levels of like what goes into that, I think is super interesting and something that not many of us are very familiar with.
absolutely.
Well, at its core, it's acting. So everything that you learn in theater is the foundation of what you do in television puppetry. Just as I would say acting and all of those tools that you learn in theater would go into stage puppetry as well. I mean, that's the most important thing you need to know. And then it's just a matter of how you act and what kind of tools you use to act with. And so puppets in film or television are, if you just take a basic Muppet style Sesame Street puppet, they're on your hand.
I'm gonna grab one.
She's gonna grab one.
Keep talking, it'll take me a second to get it.
And then I'm sure everyone here is in one way or another just played around with puppeteering with your hand, doing the lip sync, moving your hand with what you're saying. But the mechanics, as you're saying, she's grabbing some puppets right now. You need to have a monitor, which is you need to have a TV that you can look at. You, unlike other things in other acting and TV, you actually need to see what you're doing at all times. So actually, should I just pull this back and you can kind of stand up?
So, okay. So, hi. So here's kind of your standard puppet. You're gonna see all of the stuff that we have sitting here. This is what we had our computer sitting on, so you can see us. Okay, hi. All right, so I'm your standard puppet that you'd see on Sesame Street, or just Sesame Street, really. There's not much else.
First thing you need to know, Haley, I think all the students here will tell you need to find your light.
Yeah, you know what? Find your light.
There you go.
Find
all
your
right.
light. Okay, so a standard.
So she's got the puppet. She's got the puppet on her hand, right?
Yes.
And then she's looking at this monitor, which is our TV screen, or let's better yet, pretend there's a TV at her feet. All right, because that's normally where there'd be a monitor down there or somewhere. She'd be looking down at that monitor at her feet, which would be showing her what's happening up there. And then the camera itself, pretend that this camera right here on this laptop is the camera. The camera will be raised up high and zoomed in like that. So that's what's going home right there.
Yep.
This image you're seeing right now is the image that she's looking at her feet. All right. So she's moving around doing all of her puppet stuff.
Puppet stuff.
There you go. And that's how it's that's basically the mechanics of how to do. And we actually stand as puppeteers as well.
We usually stand. Yes. Sometimes we'll be on something called a rolly. The whole idea on a puppet set, what makes it different than a human set where you're just filming people, is that you, the person, have to be able to get below the camera. Wherever the camera is, I couldn't work like this because then the camera's going to see me. So I would have to get down here. And so sometimes that means that us puppeteers are in weird positions on the floor, or that either means that, or it means that the camera is up high and we just stand and put our puppets up here.
That's the basic mechanics.
The big differences. Yeah, so we
I think that's the basics.
And the basics of puppeteering, it's just, it's taking your hand and opening your hand like a mouth whenever you say ah, and closing it when you're not talking. So you try to do it with every syllable that a puppet says. That's it. So that's what we do. We get to play with stuffed animals for a living. It's great. Become a puppeteer.
If you're really lucky, you get paid for it.
Nice. Just talk, could you guys talk a little bit more about kind of like your education and career path, like how you broke into a spot where you were getting paid for playing with puppets, like what that kind of journey looks like. I know we have a couple people that are like pretty interested in pursuing some puppetry, at least as like a pretty serious hobby, and like starting to look at some like college programs and like what that could entail, or like what the best way to kind of like leave high school looking into the puppet world might be.
Yeah. Do you want to go?
Yeah, so it's kind of what I already said, which is I think you really want to hone all of those acting skills, take voiceover lessons, really learn how your embouchure works, what's happening inside your mouth, and just learn how to do, and singing, and all of those basics that you learn if you're a real you're not a real actor, but like a meat actor.
A meat actor.
Yeah. Focus on all that, and then you want to take that to your puppetry. But once you actually begin to take that to your puppetry or begin to learn puppetry, there's just so many places you can start to learn that stuff now online. There are classes you can take.
Mm-hmm. There's also UConn. If you're looking at a college or a university that has a program that is specifically geared to puppetry, to performing, building, all of that, all those aspects, the UConn, University of Connecticut.
Also, the O'Neill Center in Connecticut every summer has a program called the O'Neill Puppetry Conference for a week, and you can go there and learn lots of different styles of puppetry. And what's really great about that is they kind of force you to create your own work. So you leave there with something, which is great as well. Yeah,
and they're doing it, or they did it this past summer virtually because of COVID. Of course, everything has changed, but you can still check out the O'Neill Puppetry Conference.
But to answer your question specifically about how we got into it, for me, I didn't know. I grew up in a time before the internet, so I just kind of was making stuff up as I went. And that's kind of what you should do anyway, even with the internet at this point. Just find something a story you want to tell or a character that comes to you, and just start creating stuff out of the gate, and then go from there, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're answering your question very well.
That's okay. We're doing the thing that Zane said we could do, which is to take his question and to drive it into a completely opposite area. But yeah, for me, I found puppetry through doing the Disney College program, doing their entertainment department, which their entertainment department, at least down in Florida, it involves character work and, being in costumes. For me, I was usually in a costume of a certain lovable dog who cannot be named, or the chip that Disney put in my head will bzz.
It was Boney the dog.
Boney the dog, that's it.
I would also say, oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just gonna say, and I found puppetry through that, and that gave me really great training grounds for puppeteering and just for theater in general.
You should definitely not just focus on, and I don't think you are, focused just on Muppet style. There's so many different styles of puppetry. And one of my favorites is the tabletop bunraku, which is kind of what I use when I create my own works. So explore all different types of puppetry as well, because there's something to learn, and maybe you'll fall in love with all forms or a different form.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. How does like auditioning with like puppet work differ from like theater, or does it seem very similar, or is it kind of like I don't know, how do those worlds collide?
So when they do have an open, well, You know what they don't have in in at least the TV puppeteering world that I've at least never really come across is like a cattle call open, anybody come audition as a puppeteer. What I have come across is that there's kind of two different ways that an audition happens as a puppeteer. Number one is there might be an in-person audition, like I worked on the on A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the Mr. Rogers Tom Hanks movie came out last year. I want to say last year. I worked on that, and that was one where I went to Pittsburgh, and they were seeing, I think, maybe 30 or 40 puppeteers. We got in there, and they gave me Daniel Tiger, and who I did not play in the movie. I played X the Owl, but they gave me Daniel Tiger, and they had a camera set up, and they're like, okay, if you can just here are some lines. You know, I think that they emailed the lines out beforehand, and they even said, they're like, listen, you're not going to be speaking the lines. We're going to be speaking the lines. You just have to kind of head sync to it, which is a thing with puppetry. It was really simple. And then I flew home, then I drove home. And there's that kind of audition. And then the other kind of audition that I've come across a lot more is one where the person who is casting the puppeteering role, they just want to hear what you will sound like as the character. So they'll send you sides, and then they'll say, record these sides and send us your best take of it. And so it's been a lot of auditions where the puppetry, they end up seeing how you puppeteer later. If you get a call back, they'll see you do it with the puppet. But a lot of puppeteering auditions are your voice first, because they want to hear what it's going to sound like. Because of the acting, like what Paul was saying, acting is the most important thing. It's more important than the mechanics of a puppet. You know, the acting is the most important thing. So they want to make sure that you're finding the character through that first.
Yeah.
Interesting. So is there, do you guys end up having like a reel too? Or do you ever have like a monologue, like your sort of like, do you ever show up with your puppet and like do your spiel at like an audition? Or is that just something that's like totally different?
People do have reels. I do not have a reel right now, but people do have reels, and that can be very helpful. You can get it up on your YouTube page or your website, and that can just be a permanent audition there for people to come and see. As for a monologue, as you might have as a non-puppet actor on stage, I don't think generally puppeteers have monologues as much as they have a pocket of characters. So they may have 5, 10, 15, 20 characters that they can just call on that will either act as a foundation or act as the actual character itself that they're going to audition with. And that can be very helpful too. And those characters, you know, can come from anywhere.
Yeah. I've actually only ever had one audition ever in all of the auditions since, you know, I guess leaving high school. I've only ever had one audition for puppets where they wanted me to perform a monologue with a puppet of my choosing. And it was for the Center for Puppetry Arts, which is down in Atlanta, Georgia. It is the coolest place. It's currently, I think they're actually open for COVID. I mean, obviously no one can get there right now because no one should be traveling, but they're amazing. It's a cool museum of puppetry arts and puppets and really amazing shows. I was auditioning for a show down there, and that's what they wanted. And then when I got a call back, then they were like, okay, here are the lines for the character. This is what we want to hear you do. But yeah, I think that's the only time I've ever done a monologue like that.
It certainly doesn't hurt. You know, I mean, especially if it helps you find a character, like, why not? Absolutely. Also, the Center for Puppetry Arts is somewhere that I went right after college as an intern, and that was a great experience. So if you are interested in puppetry, particularly stage puppetry, great place to go to audition, to get an actual job or to intern.
Yeah.
Nice. Could you guys talk about like building puppets a little bit too, and like the mechanics of like learning how to puppet and like then how to actually build a functioning puppet, and like how you came into those, if like they were simultaneous for you, or if like you had to learn one because of the other, or
Well, I'd say that's kind of two-parted. Like, for neither of us consider ourselves puppet builders, I would say. We both have the skills to, repair puppets. Like, we understand the sewing aspect, we understand all that. We've both built puppets. And I used to work at a workshop in Los Angeles called Swazzle. They do a lot of amazing TV puppetry stuff, and I helped them build some of their stuff.
And also that is another great place to go and intern or get a job to learn. I'm just trying to keep throwing places if you want to learn puppetry or learn building. These are all great places to. In fact, we can also write this down and send Zane a list. So
yeah,
go ahead.
Totally. So I know enough to, if I'm with well, for example, I play Zari, one of the characters for Sesame Street, and we were doing a live performance at at the UN, and it's for the Children's Day of the UN, and it was live, it was staged. I was sitting behind this little podium waiting for my cue. Like, I had like 10 minutes to sit back there, and all of a sudden Zari's arm fell off. I was like, like behind a podium, arm fell off. But I had like this little duffel of like little, there's like safety pins and all these things. The safety pins weren't strong enough to hold. And so like I took thread out and I did like the worst sewing job possible on this puppet, and then like did all this stuff, and just in time was up there. And so like, building wise, we know just enough, to be able to do things like that, because you have to know your instrument, but I don't consider myself a builder.
Yeah, if you want to learn, I don't either. But I did try building for a long time, and I realized that I not only am not good at it, and I'm not interested in doing it, which is a great thing to learn. But I learned that by trying hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if you're interested at all in building, go for it. And now there are just lots of places online to learn some basic building stuff, and lots of places to go to also learn some basic building stuff as well. So
yeah, there's lots of online resources. Yeah.
Cool. Could you guys talk about like what you're doing now, or what you're doing? I don't know if you guys are kind of on hold, or if you're getting back into the swing of things with any productions right now, but like what a day or a week on a shoot for you guys kind of looks like.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So right now we're in production for a new show called Donkey Hody, and it is for PBS. It's the Fred Rogers Company. It's the same folks that do Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood and a lot of other shows. Also, it's like a collab with those people and Spiffy Productions based in Chicago. And Spiffy does Nature Cat. They did Jack's Big Music Show. Anyways, but so I play Donkey of Donkey Hody, and it's all these Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers Neighborhood characters.
Spelled DONKEY
space
HODIE.
HODIE. Yep. And yeah, so it's generally been every 2 weeks we fly out there, and we, you go to set, you shoot for 2 weeks, and then you come home. And Paul's been out there also with me, puppeteering on it as well. But we've been on hold.
What does your week consist of?
What does my week consist of? Well, I wake up, I eat breakfast. I get to the studio at 8. I will have, if I'm good, I will have prepared the night before. And the thing with puppetry is that, of course, memorize your lines as much as you possibly can, but we all get a little cheat. Since our faces aren't shown, we can take our scripts and stick it right beside the TV that's at our feet, or the monitor at our feet, and we can kind of check in and make sure that we're, that we're in the right spot. And so, make sure everything's highlighted, make sure you've made all your notes, make sure you know that script as well as you can. And then usually it's a 12-hour day. I think that's pretty standard, 10 to 12. It's usually 10 to 12 hours on a set. That's pretty standard. A lot of shows go a lot longer than that. My sister's working on a show that's a 14-hour day, just scheduled. It's long. But yeah, you do your scenes, you eat your lunch, do more scenes, you go home.
Are you really like just doing your scenes for like 10 of that 12 hours? Like you're doing like every day is this character, all the little scenes, like you're doing huge chunks of it at a time? Or are you like going back and forth, like interacting with other characters much? Or is it mostly like individual shots that are then edited together?
Oh, it's mostly groups. It's mostly a bunch of characters together all doing one scene together. Yeah, so it's for this show specifically, this is my first time being one of the lead characters of a show. And so I am in 99% of the scenes. So it is mostly, it is kind of, you're just up there all day and, which is great. It's fun. It's just playing, I feel like I'm
and
playing.
Are you guys like trying to get like an episode in a 2-week chunk, or are you doing a couple episodes over that 2-week chunk? And like, I'm curious how they break up filming something like that. Like I have no idea how that works.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm answering all these. I'm so excited. But for this show, at least, for a lot of children's television, a half-hour episode will often be broken up into 2 stories, 2 like 12-minute stories with room in between with commercial breaks and all that. And so that's what we do. We shoot a 12-minute chunk in 2.5 days. So in 1 week, we have shot 1 full episode being 2 12-minute chunks, which will be a half hour of television. So for every 2 weeks that we're out there, we get 2 full episodes shot.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
And how does that compare to like other TV puppetry kind of stuff? Is that a pretty standard thing, or is that more like standard for a children's show? And
it's pretty standard. I was working last year on the 5th season of Crank Yankers, and it was the same schedule out in LA. Get there at 8, leave at 8, 7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But as far as the shooting goes, how much you would get done?
Yeah. We're shooting about 2 episodes a week. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it depends. Like on Sesame Street, they'll shoot a whole episode in a day. And that's or a day and a half, because on Sesame Street, they're only shooting 12 minutes of an hour-long show or a half-hour show, and the rest is all retreaded stuff. So they can get an entire Sesame Street story mm-hmm. if everything's working done in a day.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then I guess when you do all like more of the one-off stuff, like when it's like a late night thing or like a week show, like how does that come about? Like how does John Oliver decide that he needs you guys to come and do something? Like that seems like a different process than like a TV like show.
Yeah, for me at least, for the times I have puppeteered on John Oliver, it's all because the lead puppeteer that has been hired from the production from John Oliver, they've reached out to whoever, to maybe not Sesame Street, but to
Noel McNeil.
Yeah, it's through Noel McNeil, right? Yeah. So they'll reach out to somebody and say, hey, we want to, do these puppets. How many puppeteers do you need? And that person will say, I can do it with 6. And they say, okay, go hire 6. And then that person will give us a call. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a lot of that. Like there's never auditions or anything like that for.
Yeah, like the one-off is all like people and like through friends and coworkers and like kind of
Yeah.
more word of mouth than like a traditional kind of audition process, I'd assume.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. That's
I
how
would say
it's.
in puppetry, you've got to have the skills, but a lot of it also is who do you want to work with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
for
agree.
sure.
A lot of our work is, we get a lot of our work from people that we've worked with before
Mhm.
who want to work with us again, luckily, for whatever reason. But yeah, that's an enormous amount of our work is from someone saying, hey, I was just talking to Noel and he said that you might be interested in this. And yeah, it's all that.
Where do you find your work kind of like located these days? Like, is it a lot of New York stuff? I know you're in LA some. Is it like all over? Does it feel like there's a puppet hub in the US these days at all? Or
I think
Yeah.
most of the work is in New York and Los Angeles, but there's certainly work. We're in Chicago doing this show right now, and then when it comes to shooting movies or new content, they're shooting the new Fraggle Rock up in Canada. Another show called Brenda or the Barbarian just got shot up in Vancouver. Atlanta has a lot, so it is kind of in these filming communities, but I would say the main two places you get puppetry work is New York and LA.
Yeah, I agree. For New York, it's primarily Sesame Street because Sesame Street is actually shot up in Queens at Kaufman Astoria Studios in Queens. And then, there's always some sort of like little commercial work or something happening around New York. But for the most part, for the TV puppetry community, I'd say it's mostly Sesame Street here. And then LA has always got a ton of projects going on, everything shoots out in LA. So there's always something going on there. Plus the Henson Studios are out there.
Nice. So what type of advice would you have for people on a similar path? I know you've mentioned this a little bit, we've touched on it there, but like, do you think like a college program is like a great way into puppetry, or is it like really hands-on? Is it and I guess like anything that you do differently if you were setting out to kind of like get where you're at right now again?
Oh yeah. I would personally say, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think you have to go to a puppetry program to become a puppeteer. I think it's really important to understand theater and TV production, and most of all, if you want to be a puppeteer, I think you need to consider yourself an actor first. For me, I was really into musical theater, but I was also really shy, and I would just come out of like auditions and just like be very upset or ashamed of something that I didn't do very well, and it just didn't quite click in for me. I needed that extra layer, I think, almost of protection of being able to be below the camera but still get to do all the acting just through here. But it's all acting, so I would say acting is really the most important thing. Acting and improv. Improv is also everything in this business. There's a lot of things you do are live performances where they just expect you to, to be able to chat it up with the guest or whatever. It's a lot of that.
I would say watch a lot of cartoons. Cartoons are not only going to show you the very like basic structural element of what a two-dimensional character does to express intent from tableau to tableau, from action to action. Those things translate directly to puppetry. So mechanically, it's great to watch cartoons and study those. But also, all the character work. You're going to be called on to do lots of character work. And the more variety of characters that you can feel comfortable with, that you can throw at them, the better place you're going to be. And learn to sing. Like even if you're not a natural singer, just trust yourself that you got something there.
Oh yeah.
And just take lessons and keep at it. And if you do all that stuff, you'll be in a better position than a lot of professional puppeteers out there right now. So just where you are right now as a theater student doing what you're doing is exactly where you need to be. And just keep trust. If you do want to do puppetry, just trust that the skills you're learning right now are really going to translate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say one of my biggest pieces of advice is going to sound kind of frou-frou, but it really just is true. In this business, I think that one of the most important things to work in this business and to be successful in this business is just to be somebody that people want to keep working with. And that doesn't mean you have to be, the most popular, the most liked, the most anything. It's just being dedicated to your job and being supportive of all of the departments around you. And then the most simple thing you can do that's like instant lovability on a set or in a theater is just to learn the name of every single person in every department and to use that name. Hey, good morning, Jerry. How's it going, Brenda? Doesn't matter if you don't interact with them another time in the day because they have nothing to do with your department. Just learn everyone's name and it's a surprisingly rare thing, but when people do that, it's like, I like that person. I don't really know them at all because I don't interact with them, but I really like that person. I hope we get to work together again. And then they'll think of you. And it's just the most important thing is just to be kind to everybody there because everybody, it really is a team effort. Yeah.
Cool. I guess working off of that last question, do you ever pursue non-puppetry work these days? Like, do you do other acting or other improv or
Goodbye, Rachel. Rachel's leaving.
I have to do puppetry. Oh, so cool. Bye, Rachel.
Bye, Rachel.
I look forward to seeing you and working with you someday.
Sorry,
please continue.
It just popped up, Zane. Rachel's leaving. I was like, I had to say goodbye.
Yeah, Rachel is actually going to be our puppet captain for Cinderella this spring. So
cool.
might end up trying to put you guys in touch a little bit more for some other chats there. So, but on that note, like just curious if you ever considered doing other acting, or if you're looking for other work, or if you're always like first and foremost like it is puppetry all day every day when it comes to work these days, or if you think of yourself as a broader actor, or you're looking at voiceover work or anything like that.
I haven't gotten a lot of non-puppet work, but I definitely take non-puppet classes all the time. So before COVID, I was enrolled regularly in acting classes, in improv classes, in singing lessons. I continue to take those classes. So that's as close as I get to non-puppet stuff, but it's just this continual enrichment.
Yeah. And I do some meat acting, as we call us when we don't have a puppet in our hands. I did a live show last Halloween, like a year and change ago, called All Hallows Eve. It was a spooky Halloween show in New York, and I played Eve in that show, and I really loved it. I love being on a stage. I just love the environment of theater. I used to pursue that more. I would go to, the open auditions in New York. And for me, I'm the same way. Most of the work I get is puppetry, which I'm very lucky to say that because I love doing it. But I also love stage combat. It's something that I found I really loved from doing a live show. And then I took some of those classes, and, it's just good to enrich yourself and things outside of puppetry. And also when I come home, I don't puppeteer. Like, we've got puppets and stuff around, and like, we're always kind of joking around with each other, but we
I
have
mean,
other things in life.
Playing Battlefront is kind of like puppeteering.
That's true. I play Star Wars Battlefront on PS4. Hailstorm 1313. A lightsaber battle with me.
She recently got her own Twitch page
wow.
to stream her PS4 work.
I've been on once and no one watched it, so it's done. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then kind of my last question before we invite people back is just kind of like, do you see the industry changing for you guys? Like, both like COVID and non-COVID, like theatrically, we've talked about, the advent of like more projection and more like LED worked into the stage shows, and like just like kind of like bringing back a large audience. But like since a lot of what you guys are doing is TV, like do you feel like that's shaped it as much, or now like the production companies are kind of learning how to work within this new normal right now, and so like while there's some extra hoops to jump through, you're kind of like back on track a little bit?
Mm-hmm. I think productions are finding a way. Life finds a way, and it definitely we're still working. There was a giant chunk of time during lockdown where we weren't. Of course, no one should have been, but then production kind of figured out ways to do it with very stringent testing and safety protocols on sets. Sets look different now. That now there's these A zone, B zone, C zones that people work in on most sets. On our sets, we don't have that. Instead, everyone is just masked and distanced, and it's a smaller set that we're working on in Chicago. But I would say that, yeah, everything is kind of stopped for a while, but now productions are finding ways to make it work, and it's working.
Mm-hmm.
People are being able to safely go back to work, at least in our business. Thank God. Because it was sad for a while there.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Paul. Did you have?
No, I don't. I was trying to address your other part of that question too. I don't really know how puppetry is changing. I mean, there may be some more technical aspects.
Yeah, I was kind of curious if you see like more animatronic like control coming in, or like if there's like, I think the most fun puppets are always going to be like some of the simplest, right? Like that imaginative part is like a big part of what attracts people to them in the first place, and like
Yeah.
But like as we get into some of these like bigger shows, like if you see, well, not bigger shows, but like different types of shows with like the large puppets, like, and the interaction of like a larger set piece or something that's like more machine controlled with that human touch, like if you see that kind of coming in, or if that's like its own niche still.
Well, Baby Yoda, right? Grogu, like he's a perfect example of what you're talking about with puppetry becoming more and more advanced. That's a puppet, it's there's very rarely any CG on it at all. It's 3 puppeteers, I believe.
On the Mandalorian.
On the Mandalorian. I think it's 3 puppeteers, and it's remote puppetry. Or the puppeteers are all wearing, blue screen or green screen suits, and they're standing kind of behind it, controlling it with like these rods. You can find pictures online of how they're doing it. But yeah, I actually think that the puppetry landscape is changing in a really good way, in that for a while there, CG had taken over, and there were very few jobs, and it was kind of looking a little bit bleak for the future of, movies and everything needing puppeteers. But that's kind of taken a turn, and everybody wants something that's tangible again. That's why they want Baby Yoda. That's why all my examples are going to be Star Wars based, but Star Wars is really great at employing puppeteers. Baby Yoda is just perfect. Everyone loves him so much. And I don't know they would if he was CG. He could look exactly the same, but if you know in your brain that he's not real, it's hard to connect. The same with BB-8. BB-8 was a puppet, is a puppet. And he's the most lovable little guy, even though he looks like a little, he's a little droid. That's all puppeteered. It's all the same thing.
Yeah. And I would say that no matter how big the puppet gets, I worked on Walking with Dinosaurs, which were these huge dinosaurs, on Little Shop of Horrors. On that show, you start with a small plant, but then you get to this Audrey 2 that you're standing inside, and on Broadway that goes out over the audience. I mean, you can get some really big spectacle in your puppetry, but in the end, you're still coming down to the same rules of puppetry. You're still trying to create a character and make it focus and give it life and make its intention clear. So you can have the most spectacular puppet, but if you're not giving it the foundational aspects of a performance, then it's just going to bore the audience after 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys.
Dane?
Real pleasure chatting with you here. I'll go ahead and stop recording and invite folks back. And